if you're not absolutely clear, not only in the role that you need, but if you're not absolutely clear in yourself, you're just setting yourself up for failure.
Best thing to sell is yourself. If you can't sell yourself, how can you sell my product?
Am I gonna just survive, or can I try to find a way to go from surviving to thriving? What's interesting in the age of intelligence is that EQ is the most important thing.
Welcome to the next episode of the Entrepreneurial Excellence Podcast. Most founder origin stories start with an Ivy League degree, a Y Combinator batch, or a stint at Google. Today's guest started behind a bar in Winnipeg. Berard is the founder and CEO of Jagger, a modern headhunting firm that's quietly become one of the most trusted talent partners for high-growth companies. In just 5 years, though I think you've been around for almost 10, his team has filled over 500 searches and helped 2,000 plus people find better jobs. And he did it without a playbook the recruiting industry has been using for over 40 years. Before Jagger, Jay co-founded Posy, an iOS app for positivity-only social interactions, which we need more of in today's world, while you were in your last semester at the University of Manitoba. It was acquired, and you went into operating roles at Switch Growth, Gaia, Drippy AI, and CoLife. She spoke alongside Olympic medalist Clara Hughes for the Canadian Mental Health Association. You've run with the Bulls in Spain, jumped out of planes in the Swiss Alps, and traveled to 45 plus countries. But what makes Jay interesting isn't his resume. It's this kind of key through line. A guy who turned an unglamorous, transactional, often kind of shady industry, recruiting, into a relationship-driven, high-trust business. While AI is supposedly automating recruiters out of existence, Jay's team is doing the opposite, doubling down on human craft and winning. Today, we're going to deep on the story, how a bartender from Winnipeg built a recruiting firm the best founders actually trust. Jay, welcome to Entrepreneurial Excellence.
Thanks for having me.
But maybe to start off, so every episode, I always ask people one key question to start, which is, how do you define entrepreneurial excellence? Like, so you're on your second business, you've been running this business for 10 years, presumably in a successful and profitable way. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be here talking to me. So what does it mean to be an excellent entrepreneur? And you've worked with many of the best out there, right? You're working with CEOs of top companies. How do you define entrepreneurial excellence?
The greatest entrepreneurs that I work with and that I know are always just trying to get one step further than the day they were previously.
And what does it actually mean in like reality? So when you say, like, even use yourself as an example, I presume you want to be an excellent entrepreneur yourself. What does that mean in your day to day? Like, how do you make yourself better, a little bit better every single day, and like push yourself to do that versus the average person who, by definition, almost by what you're saying, is the average person does not do that. So what is the difference?
Well, I believe a company can only scale and change at the rate at which their founder is willing to scale and change themselves, right? And so, when you think about the best companies in the world, the best founders in the world, they didn't start off that way. Like, every single day, week, month, year will always reveal different challenges that you have to rise up to the challenge and actually take on. And so many people, just in everyday life, when those challenges arise, they just want to stay where they are. They want to stay comfortable. They want to stay doing what they know. Whereas, entrepreneurs who accomplish a lot of success, especially in a short period of time, are actually seeking out all of those challenges and all of those problems that will pull them to where they need to go. And so when you think about, for myself anyways, I can speak to, the experience of, when I first started out and to where we are now. If I was operating the way I was 10 years ago, I wouldn't really have a business. I wouldn't have people that believed in my leadership. I wouldn't have people that believed in a vision because I would have never sort of grown throughout the process.
Why? What's changed? So what's changed between when you started 10 years ago to today? Like, how are you different?
Okay, a great example of how I used to think is I used to be a chronic saver, right? And very, very astute financially. And I look at money and I look at financing as a bit of an energy, right? So when I first started out, it was like looking at every single dollar coming in and every single dollar going out, and really, like, every week just being like, am I closer? Am I further away? What's cost money? What doesn't? And the problem with that is when you're so consumed by saving money or dollars in and dollars out, sometimes you're doing it at the expense of your own growth of your business, where it's like something could be seen as an investment and you're only thinking about it as a sunk cost, or like, I'm spending that money on something versus investing in it, right? That's like one example where now, maybe this is just a byproduct of the business being a little bit more successful, but now it's kind of the opposite. It's sort of I'm seeking out opportunities to invest more money in the business to help it grow. And that has also resulted in us spending more money than ever, but making more money than ever. And so, it's this sort of trade-off and balance that if I think about when I first started out, tons of fear, tons of scarcity in terms of the way that I was thinking about everything. And now it's more, abundant as a bootstrapped business. Every single dollar that I think about is like my own dollar. And it's been always interesting because we work with a ton of venture backed companies. So a lot of times and some of these venture capitalists are actually amazing partners to the business too, where they will also tell you where you should spend it. Like, hey, you need to go hire, you need to take the headcount from 30 people to 75 people to hit these numbers and this growth and this cadence. And we ran the model. And so it really helps someone be able to understand what they're saying and go and spend that money. And again, when you enter in the venture game, you don't really have a choice. Like, to your point, venture investors are looking for venture outcomes. So you have to be willing to invest and spend and grow at all costs. When you're a bootstrap business owner, like, again, it's always your own money. You're trying to be conscientious of investments and dollars spent because you don't want to lose money. You don't want to waste any money. And for me, the first, let's say 5, 6 years of the business, I would say a lot of those decision making criteria that I would evaluate the business on, it was a lot of, yeah, like a little bit more scarcity, a little bit more surviving, right? Like, every year you're surviving, you're surviving, you're surviving, you're surviving. And then at some point, you have to ask yourself, am I going to just survive for the rest of my life? Like, from a mindset perspective, like, is that all I'm going to do? Or can I try to find a way to go from surviving to thriving? And what does that look like to me? Sure, you can like save and somewhat grow and time will go on, but I want to accomplish more things in a shorter period of time. So how do I do that? And usually how you allocate capital is a way to really cut that down. So for me, it was all mindset.
How do you think so? So how do you think through then decisions you make for the business today, like where to invest, what you're putting money into? How do you make those decisions? It's not obviously like wait. An abundance mindset doesn't mean waste money, right? It's not saying go waste it. So how do you decide where to actually put the money in for Jagger?
As the company's grown and as we start to make more and more money, you do get a little bit loose on certain things, or you don't actually have the mental energy to even think about this like $100 a month tool that one of your team members brings to you that they want to like put in. You just go, yeah, let's do it, right? But nothing feels worse than wasting money. So sometimes you might have these like software subscriptions you kind of forgot about. You're like, why? I've been paying for this for 2 years. We haven't even logged in, and like nothing feels worse than that, right? But for me now, look, it's very simple, right? We are living through an AI revolution, and so many companies, ours included, the whole playbook is being rewritten at our feet. So I have to be willing to just be all offense on trying to adopt new tools, trying to change the way that we do what we do so that we stay relevant in this current moment. And so a lot of that will be like, for example, adopting new AI tools. I'm pretty price insensitive of what that might look like if I think it could be good for our business and like, will you try it out? One thing too is like in-person things, something that I always discredited, which again was looking back is a little bit to the demise, is like, oh, we're a digital business. We can recruit from anywhere in any market, phone and a laptop, which is great. But especially as the world becomes more AI forward and more consumed on their phones, those in-person experiences and that opportunity to be in the right room with the right people is so valuable and is only going to get more valuable. So we've been sponsoring more events, we've been hosting more dinners, and I can see the direct ROI. A dinner might cost us $8,000 to $10,000. There's somebody in the room that's relevant. They end up working with us on a search, and it pays back multiples.
Going back to your point about like getting better every single day and in all the researches that you do, is that a mindset that you think people should look for in hires? Like how do you, so when you build a search, someone constantly wants to hire a person, what are they looking for on average? Like and forget like the actual role, right? There must be other intangible qualities that people should be looking for or maybe aren't looking for. What does that actually look like and mean?
Well, every role, every search, regardless of role, it's trying to align on the obvious things. So you need the skill set fit, you need the cultural fit, personality fit. Sometimes, depending on who it's working with, it could be like a founder fit and stage fit, right? Like that's something that I think a lot of people get wrong is like you need to know what stage this company's at for all of those things to make that a real proper match. And that's just the basics. As it relates to some of the characteristics of really great hires and what people look for, especially right now, especially when you hire with startups, there's always this, ability to deal with ambiguity, this ability to grow fast, this ability to learn, like the rate of learning and the rate of which people can, learn something new, a new process, a new, like whatever it is, that's something that everyone always kind of indexes for because especially right now, everything's changing. And what's interesting is I come back to these playbooks that a lot of our clients are changing the way they're doing customer success, recruiting, HR, sales, like the whole playbook's kind of changing. And so what hires make the most sense in this environment? Is it somebody that's been there, done that? Or is it somebody that's willing to lean in and can actually adopt this and very quickly pick it up and be able to leverage it, right? What's more important to you? This is why sometimes companies look for like former athletes. Why is that? Well, again, there's this dealing with failure, overcoming failure. There's this sense of resiliency you have as an athlete. There's a sense of what it means to be a good team member. Like these are why people are always trying to find things that they can sort of index on when they're trying to hire. But yeah, those characteristics are only going to get more and more important, right? Like what's interesting in the age of intelligence is that EQ is the most important thing. I've always thought it was the most important thing. But if intelligence becomes abundant and becomes commoditized, what's going to be the most important thing? It's going to be who has the strongest emotional quotient and who can actually, work the best with the people inside the business because everyone's going to be working with agents, I guess. So.
But then how do you, on the point of like the stuff around like EQ and hiring for that, or hiring for people who are constantly like improving themselves? How do you, outside of hiring former athletes, how do you help companies identify those people nowadays? What does that look like? Like if I'm trying to do this search on my own, right? You're too expensive, let's say. How do I find those people or identify?
The only way that you can actually identify and get to that understanding is you have to get them on a call with you. You have to get them actually live in chat, right? So the way that we help companies is like our first and foremost, responsibility is to make sure that we do the right sort of search and actually get in touch with a lot of people so that we can get all of them, having that conversation with us. And this is no different than if you do it yourself, right? If you are trying to hire for yourself and you only reach out to three people and you have three conversations and you end up hiring one of them, like I don't know if you've spoken to enough people or if you've actually gone far enough reaching to know what's out there. So like that's the one piece of it. When you get someone on a call, like obviously every role, every situation is different. There's different personality archetypes. Like when you speak to somebody in sales, it's usually a pretty different call than when you speak to somebody in engineering. So there's different reasons why someone would give you those instinctual feelings of like they're better at this than not. But there's certain signals that you can pay attention to, right? A lot of times people will, if they want to lead, to tell you how they've progressed through their career and what steps they took throughout the way to get there, right? Because an easy question could be like, oh, I see that you're like a head of sales in this company and you started out as a BDR over there. Like, tell me about the story. Like, how did you get here? And usually the ones that are the real hitters are the ones that are so specific in their storytelling that, it's just like they're almost a little bit captivating in terms of when they tell you. Those are usually the people who are the most actual functionally deep experts in their field when they go super deep on their stories. Other times people are a little bit wishy-washy. They kind of say things that are like they brush over some of the main stuff. You never really know if they were the one that drove those results or if they were like a part of it, you
So
know?
how do you get good at asking the right questions and I guess maybe active listening to hear when they kind of brush it off? Because sometimes you want to just move on quickly and you want to get that person in the seat. And you're like, oh, the resume looks good. I want to move fast. But I think it's so critical to actually like listen deeply and go deeper. Like, tell me more. Like, how did you really do that? But that's difficult for people to do. How do you get good at that?
There's I probably speak for a lot of like recruiters out there where you build this sort of intuition over how many calls you have and how many processes you see and how many whatever, there's so many times where like, I've made the wrong hire for myself. I've seen my clients made the right hire, the wrong hire. And you kind of try to look back on like, what did we miss? Right. And many times it is that we lead by our assumptions or so for example, one of the hardest roles for people to nail is like your first VP of sales when you're doing like founder led sales. It's usually the one that most people get wrong because what ends up happening is like you might be a startup in this space and you're trying to hire this VP of sales that can take you from 5 million of ARR to 20 million of ARR. And you have somebody who was a VP of sales at somebody in your space who went from 5 to 25 and you're like, "Oh my God, this person has all the contacts, they have the relationships, has the playbook. This is a slam dunk hire." And you kind of, you almost skip through all the questioning that you would have, where you would have your signals on, where you could really feel if this person was really the right fit, because you're like, oh, if this person wants to work for us, this is a slam dunk. And the reason that usually goes wrong is because, what it took to go from 5 to 25, maybe they had a chip on their shoulder they no longer do. Maybe now they have expectations around having more of a team and resources. They don't have the same, life stage that they were at 5 years ago. So these are the things where you really got to like spend some time with and make sure that you're not leading by assumptions and having your own biases. It's funny because I look at hiring truthfully sometimes like financial advising, like the reason you use a financial advisor is because they have no real like emotional stake in their investing decisions. Whereas sometimes when you're doing it, you have all these things going in your head about why you want to invest in something, why you don't want to invest in something. And I think hiring can be like that as well, right? So
So how often, even with all that said, right? How often does it go wrong for companies when they use you guys, use great recruiters? How often does it go wrong? And maybe there's a few things to answer there. Like one, how critical, maybe we'll break it up, right? How critical is it for the company itself to know what they're looking for? In other words, how critical is it for them to be like, I know really what I want? In other words, like I find a lot of cases founders don't have a good, if they don't have a good handle on the job role they're trying to hire for, it makes it really difficult to hire for that role or have it work out long term. So like, what do you do to make sure customers really have a clear job description and understanding of the role? And what do you do to help them get there? Right? If you're hiring your first VP of sales and you're some technical founder who's never run sales in your life, even if you try doing sales yourself for a while, how are you going to get that piece correct?
one of the hardest things to do is to hire for a company that doesn't actually know why they're looking or what they're looking for. Like if you're not absolutely clear, not only in the role that you need, but if you're not absolutely clear in yourself, right? For example, if you define your culture in a certain way, but it's just words and you don't actually live it, you're just setting yourself up for failure, right? And so many people don't even know themselves. And so getting extremely clear about the type of people you're looking for, the type of culture you're trying to build, the roles that you need right now, and being so like even from a background perspective, it's like if you're looking for a VP of product and it's a consumer product and you're hell bent on them having that background, great. But if it turns out that you actually don't need that, you're going to go down this goose chase and it's going to be a nightmare.
How do you recommend people get to know themselves? Like, what's your advice to like know yourself? Like, how much work do you do as a recruiter with a founder? Be like, do you know yourself? Like, do you dig in there a bit and almost like act like a coach in a weird way?
If they want us, if they will allow me to, so many times when we get the call, it's like they've maybe done that a little bit themselves, and then we're just like there to solve the main problem, which is like, hey, I need to find this person. And sometimes we'll be like, are you sure that's the role that you need right now? Maybe it's more of this versus that. Sometimes it's a level setting thing. They're not sure if they should hire a VP or a director. That's a little different because they know that they need the skill set, right? It could be like a VP of finance, for example, or a director of finance, or maybe it's a controller. Like that's a little bit easier. It's more so, if you are thinking that you need a VP of sales when you actually need to turn over the entire sales team immediately and hire a new founding AE, right? That's a little bit harder to know because really only the companies themselves have that depth.
And then how often for in situations like that, how often does a company think that putting a person in a seat will solve their problems versus it being something more fundamental? Like to your point is like, maybe they think I need to hire a VP of sales because they're going to solve my problem. In reality, the whole marketing team is a mess and they need to start from scratch.
I think it happens more often than not. Building a company is hard. And when you've never done it before, you've never hit a certain stage, or you hit a growth, you hit like a growth curve and you're like trying to figure it out as you go. Yeah. A lot of times you're like, well, if I hire the right person, this will solve this problem. And then you only find out later that it's actually a much deeper structural thing. And sometimes people are good for you in a certain moment and not good for you for the next. So that's another kind of interesting evolution of the business, right? And I think when one of the questions that you asked was around how many times do we see that people get it wrong? If we do 100 placements, we'll have like 4 or 5, it's usually about 5% replacements, which means, there's a replacement guarantee usually with search firms. It can be 3, 6, 9, 12 months, whatever it is. And that's just to say, hey, you're going to pay us to finding you somebody that you hire. And obviously you paid a fee. So if it's just a bad hire, like if it's like, hey, well, this was the wrong person, but you paid a fee and you know that 6 weeks in, yeah, let us know, find you someone else at no additional cost or whatever. So there's so many factors as to why someone doesn't actually end up working out, but that's just because you have two moving parts, companies and people. So
is it a signal though, on the other hand, like if someone doesn't want to do or is not open to doing a work trial of some sort, even if they're in another job they like, they're like, no, I'm not going to go do that. Like to me, that would almost be a signal that they're not really serious about the role. Because if I were in their shoes, I'd also want to get to know the company better.
yeah, yeah. I mean, work trialed a little bit harder. Work like some sort of like 3-hour case, different, right? That's kind of more of an expectation now. And these are usually steps. Let's say it's a 5-step process, a 4-step process. We're talking about towards the end, right? So somebody would have at least a pretty good understanding if this business would be. But yeah, it's all fun and games in recruiting until paperwork's on the table. That's the thing. Is like you might think someone's extremely interested in your company, but Then you put an offer out to them and they're like, oh, wait, hang on. And they, they get all squirrely and, oh, I have this other opportunity. And like, they tell you that they were leaning most towards yours, but they've taken something else. Like that happens all the time because it is just, your people are going through the motions a lot of times with conversations. And especially in a market like now, you have to assume that if somebody's taking a conversation with you, they're taking a conversation with three or four others just because
Yeah.
hiring's gotten really intense again. Right. So, and this is what's so interesting about this current moment in time in the talent market, which is you have these companies with unprecedented growth rates, things that we've never seen before. Cursor selling for 60 billion 3 years after inception. Like the amount of money, whether it's on paper or whether people are cash cow secondaries, doesn't really matter. The amount of money that's being made, the amount of revenue that's being made, we've never seen this happen. Like this is so if you're like the best talent, right? You are likely joining these companies, you're holding out to join these companies, or like that's kind of your goal and mission, right? And or you've been there and you've kind of like left and whatever. And then you have all these other people who can be great. And a lot of companies want to hire those people from those types of companies, but they can't. So, you know, trying to hire an engineer right now for an in-office role in San Francisco for a seed stage company that might be building something pretty interesting, but is not one of these high flying AI. First of all, the comp has gotten, pretty ridiculous. So it's hard to compete on that. They're going to have to be a real strong belief in what you're building, right? If you're building a scheduling software or AI scheduler, like I don't think, that's probably not going to land you the people that you're looking for. Because a lot of times they'll, especially with what's going on, they might just go start their own thing too. It's like if I can't get into those companies, I'm
100%.
just gonna start my own thing. So yeah, and the other thing that's interesting about the applicant pool, like the job people that are applying, everyone is using AI. So now you're getting reports around how Anthropic AI is favoring resumes that was written by Anthropic. And same thing with like if you were using a resume reviewer that it was built on top of OpenAI, they have bias and preference for resumes that were written from someone using OpenAI versus like writing it themselves. So what's really interesting is you now have people going to Claude, let's say, and saying, rewrite my resume. Here's my LinkedIn. Here's what I've done. Here's what I want you to capture in. So the resume gets rewritten. Then they have these AI appliers. So the AI appliers just take the resume and just scour the internet and just apply them. So there's a lot more noise. And then on those applicant pools, now you have all the AI reviewers, which are passing and forward and stack ranking based on. So this is literally just feels like all now just like a little bit AI slop, right? And I say this to people who are looking for roles. I don't get discouraged if you're not hearing back because so many times people think, oh, I've applied to 30 places and no one's gotten back to me. I must have to change something in my resume. I say to them, it's likely that no one saw your resume. You don't know who's reviewing it on the other side, right? So
So if someone listening to this is an applicant, how do they get through that, right? Because I totally agree. It's like slop on slop. You have AI slop being on the applicant side, and you have AIs reviewing. If you're lucky, AIs reviewing those applications. Not always. They don't even. Some of these companies don't even have a good system for review, and it's an overwhelming amount of applications. So how does on the applicant side, how do you get over that hill? And actually, then how on the employer side, how do you get over that too? How do you deal with the massive inbound?
we forgot one layer of slop, which is companies are also creating their job descriptions with AI. So the thing that we're matching to was also created by AI.
When did these job roles just go to AI as well? Like at
Mhm.
some point we have AI and AI and AI. Why have the person involved in the first place? But we'll save that for a question maybe near to the end. So in the short term, what seriously, once again, like what do the applicants do? And then how do companies deal with the massive AI overload inbound?
I think you have to like I've said this for the last 10 years, which is you need to go find the hiring manager. You need to send a connection request on LinkedIn. You need to add within your 300 words something that you can just grab their attention a little bit and just try to see if you can go direct. Or you got to look at the unconventional ways, which is like, what is my second degree in, which could be someone that you know at the company, could be like someone that you used to work with. Like, there's got to be some way in, or like paying attention to things other than just the job posts, which could be, you might look at, there could be a podcast by somebody that like, there's so many ways that you can like maybe get someone's attention for something other than that particular job that's posted. That's just like very basic stuff, which a lot of people do. And again, it's getting easier with the AI tools where you can find that.
Give you an example for people listening that worked well for us. So we were hiring for a sales role, interviewing a lot of people. We were kind of near the end of our process. And then one guy reached out on WhatsApp to myself and our head to go to market, sent us messages there, sent a pretty aggressive, like going after it. They were like, okay, we'll interview you. He's made it. I've had 3 other people in that role and I fired all of them because none of them got it done in the first few. I've been pretty aggressive about saying like, as a sales role, if you're not moving, here's our list of things I expect you to do in the first month. If you're not like on it, you're not going to stick around. I just don't have any patience anymore. And this guy stuck around. He's made it work, and he's moved pretty quickly, but it was unconventional. He was sort of late to the process. He didn't, he wasn't applying, wasn't looking early enough, whatever it was. And he found ways to get in touch with all of us in the ways that I would hope a good salesperson would do.
The conventional advice that is out there around jobs is just dated. It's like, why do young people not have work? They say, I know that there's some trends that are bucking that now, because you'll see like Salesforce just announced they're hiring 1,000, fresh grads or whatever. But
Oh, I
you
didn't
know,
see that. That's great. A little bit of something going the other direction. That's great.
yeah, I think it was Mark Andreessen had tweeted something, narrative violation, which was now the youth unemployment in North America is pretty high, and so and all these people going to university, they're like nervous about what they're going to do after university, and it's like, so conventional wisdom says, well, try to get a job, get some experience, and like grow from there. But right now, for a lot of the jobs, it's like, I'm not looking to hire somebody with no experience, because like AI is kind of handling a lot of that stuff. But in that lies also this incredible opportunity, which is like all of these kids coming out of university, like you have all of the tools that every business owner and every person wants to like hire experts in. And like, it's just at your fingertips. And it's so actually easy to start working with these tools. And then you can like, as you start, like, it's just a different way of doing it, right? It's like, I'm actually going to gain the experience, me and the AI first, and figure out my value proposition with this that I can then bring to companies. No one's really thought about it that way, but that would be your best way in. If somebody reached out to me and was like, "Hey, I saw that you're in the recruiting space. I actually figure out a way to do this and that, and figure out which one of your companies are hiring next and how to shop." I'd be like, "Cool. What? Show me." And then I'd probably hire that person. Right? That's just the initiative alone is enough for me to be like, "Wow, this person sounds awesome. Get him in."
Yeah, I mean, truly, I'll give you another example that someone should do for a recruiting firm. It'd be like, hey, someone should apply to you and be like, hey, I looked at your entire team. Here are the people that I think, but based on the signals I've looked at that I can pull publicly, these are the people on your team who right now are looking for other roles themselves, are doing other things. And like, as a business owner, I'm sure like, I hope your team's happy and everything else, but like some of your team members may be looking for other jobs. I don't know, those are
Exactly.
things that someone could go build.
I also think that we are in this, just again, is it attention starved? Is that what I'm thinking of? Or like we're just like attention depleted economy. It's not just about people being self-absorbed and doom scrolling and being on their phones and having so many tabs open, but like, so many people now, it's like, yeah, we're trying to keep up with AI. We have all these things to do with work. Like people are just self-consumed, and they don't have that much bandwidth to, if I got to go and look at this applicant pool and there's 600 applicants, and then like, I'll just put it off to another day, or I'll fly through it or whatever. Right. But then I'm like doing something on my own. I'm on Slack and I get a WhatsApp message from somebody saying, "Hey, this is," and I'm like, "Oh, what's that?" And they catch my attention. And it's just something that's like, "Oh, that's kind of interesting." I'll engage with that person. Right. Because I just think that the world's so attention starved, because we're just spread out in so many different ways. So
100%.
yeah.
And it's all, of course, all only getting worse in different ways. Like I built a whole AI to review all my WhatsApp messages as an example now. So yeah, but so okay, so then okay, you talk about how candidates can try to stick out. How do companies deal with all this sloppy there? Okay, let's pretend most of your candidates are not actually being smart about how to apply, and they're just going through they see an application, they click apply, they use AI to write it for them, and then they cross their fingers that they get noticed. And the company is like, oh my God, the number of applications has gone up by 10x. How does a company wade through that to find the diamond in the rough they want to hire?
Well, I think for a lot of the companies that have a lot, like very heavy applications, like they're all adopting AI tools to at least do the initial sift through, right? So if I like, for example, as a recruiter, if I was to post a job and there was 250 applicants, I just assume that 225 or so are just not relevant at all, right? So but if it's my mandate to make sure that I don't miss anyone, because I say in recruiting, it's not always about who you can find, sometimes about who you don't miss, right? Whether that's looking in your local market to have somebody that's in the office or whatever, or it's a really hard search, you got to make sure that you don't miss anyone before you sort of like change gears. And so if I'm like, oh, there's 250 applicants, the rate at which I fly through their profiles, like scroll, like it's very quick, right? Because I'm just looking for my signal that I look for, the 5-second screen, the 3-second screen that recruiters look for. But that's maybe for one job. For these companies that have 10 jobs with 1,000 applicants in each, they have to use some sort of a system. There's no way. There's no way they have a dedicated person just reviewing those applicants. It's just not happening.
Yeah.
And so I can't speak to that as a system, because I don't do it personally and I don't know what the results are. But I think that there's certain roles where that actually does work, usually more like entry to intermediate level roles. But in terms of a recruiting motion, every company has to have a solid outbound motion, whether they do it themselves or they use a recruiter. Because at the end of the day, like again, this whole world is moving from your ability to do work to can you cut through the noise? Like, can you actually sift through all this and get to what you need to get to? Which for our purposes is all of this things going on. Can we find the 3 to 5 candidates that we think are going to be great for this company? And how do we do that? We have to just go direct through the noise. And so as new companies have to have a robust outbound. The COO of OpenAI actually had a video talking about how he's using Codex for his own recruiting and how he's actually getting through. And he's like, this is actually better than, some of the experience I've had with experts.
So on that note, I mean, like, so then what do you guys do to make recruiting really successful? Like, what is the method that makes it worthwhile to pay you guys, 30 to 100K or whatever your fee is going to be for top level talent? What do you do that makes it worthwhile versus me either hiring someone full time or going direct or using AI to rebuild it? What's the value add that Jagger, but let's just call it any recruiting firm, has?
Well, I think there's a couple factors. You already mentioned one, which is time, right? So especially if you're like a founder of an early stage company, like you do not have the time to run recruiting yourself. It's just so time consuming. The worst thing that can happen when you're a founder is you're like, I'm going to do my own recruiting, and you go on LinkedIn or do whatever, and you do your search, and then you reach out to like 5 people, right? And you reach out to those 5 people, and 3 of them book time, and you're excited because their background looks exactly what you're looking for. You get on a call with them, 30-minute call. 5 minutes in, you talk comp. They're 200K more than you could pay. You're like, oh, this was kind of a waste of time. Like that is such a time suck, right? So like that's one very obvious quotient. Second is I really think that I say this a lot about myself. Sometimes companies praise me for the hires they made, right? Oh, you found us this person. Oh my God, they're the best. So thank you so much, right? And then sometimes they'll like have somebody that worked them for like 8 months and they quit. Like, oh, we didn't get it right that time, but we'll get it right the next time, right? And they like it's more of a blame thing, right? On that. And I've learned over the years that you can't actually praise me or blame me for your hire because at the end of the day, you are the ones hiring. So when you make a great hire, that's more of a reflection of you than it is the recruiter. The recruiter can put you in that position. The recruiter always needs to be judged on the pipeline that they built for you. That's my honest belief because there's been times where like we've had 3 finalists or 2 finalists. I know who I would hire, but I'm not the company. I'm not the expert. I'm not the selection committee in that process. I need to do my job to put my company, my clients in the best position to hire, which comes down to, do I understand the role? Do I understand the nuance? Can I build a pipeline? Does that pipeline look a little different of characteristics, a little different of level so that they feel the most informed and also that their market is covered at that time, right? Like I said, I didn't miss anyone. So I put them in the best position to hire. So there's a time piece. There's a quality of pipeline being built, right? Where, if you use a recruiter and they send you one person, that's not really going to get you anywhere. So did they build a great pipeline and great experience? The third benefit, I think, when you have a recruiter working with you versus working for yourself is there are many times, sometimes people will respond to a founder directly over a recruiter, which makes sense. That's like a pretty obvious thing. You go, well, if the founder reaches out, they'll be more excited. But there are other times where if the founder reached out and then they went online and saw your company, they may not be interested in it because they might just make their own assumptions. They may not know enough about it. Sometimes a recruiter comes in, there's a little bit of that sort of intrigue, or they know that we're working with multiple opportunities. They might just want to jump on a call generally. And then they might share more, you know what I mean? So there's a little bit of that element, I would say as well. The last piece of that all is just like, again, driving a great experience for the customers that we work with, knowing that we're out in market representing the brand, right? As their agent, basically, to just obviously like anyone that has any sort of interaction with our clients, we make sure that they have a great experience with us and the clients. Cause again, candidate experience is great to hire great talent, but it's also great for our brands. So these are the other intangibles I think that you have, but it only matters. The only thing that we get graded on is how quickly did you build this pipeline for me and did we get the hire? That's it. That's all people care about when they work with us.
And how do you go about doing that? Like, what is the sort of secret sauce to some extent to like build those pipelines, get those people in the door? What does that look like in today's world?
Okay, so this is a theory that I've been sharing a lot, especially in pitches lately, which is the bad, the good, the great recruiter. So bad recruiters, that's easy to identify because it's actually better sometimes where you're like that this person's not what you thought they were. So like they send you candidates you're not interested in, they're not that responsive, they're not that enjoyable to work with. The thing about a bad recruiter is maybe that's like 60% of the industry, could be higher. I don't know, maybe lower. But let's say that's because there's a little barrier to entry.
How do you know if you're a founder once and you've never hired a recruiter before? How do you know if they're good or bad? Like,
I think within your first 2 weeks. within your first 2 weeks, you'll know if they've sent you, if they sometimes like maybe the direction was off from the start of the search. And so your first three candidates you saw were like not quite what you're looking for, and they course correct, and that's fine. But within 2 weeks, you've already gotten one round of submits or two rounds of submits. You've seen how they've worked. You can kind of tell. So bad recruiters, yeah. So that's easy to identify. And then there's good recruiters. And good recruiters are usually fine. It's usually a good thing. They send you people worth speaking with. They're pleasant to interact with. The only time a good recruiter ends up in a bad spot is in order for them to get to your, let's say your five solid potential hires. Maybe they've reached out to 200, and then there's 40. There's a numbers game a little bit, right? Is that they take what you tell them and they go to market and they're too broad. So they reach out to too many people under that thing. We're not really listening to the nuance. And so as you reach out to more and more people and you're too broad to filter down, the problem with that is that all those people start booking time with you. And then you start, oh, this person sounds pretty good. Oh, this feels pretty good. And they're sending you people. And you're like, oh, this person looks worth interviewing. And you're interviewing them. And the only time that ends up in a real problem for companies is you end up in an interview cycle, interview loop, where all of a sudden you're like, how are we still looking for this role after 3 months? They're not getting that little extra. They're not getting you the 9 and 10 out of 10. It's like a bunch of 7 out of 10s, right? So again, you just call it what it is and you move on. Great recruiters, which might be 1% of the industry, they understand the nuance of the business, the nuance of the role, what's being said without being said. And they start so narrow that those first 40 people that they reach out to, if they get 5 of those 40, I bet you the search is over. Like, it's so targeted, and they expand as they need to. I'll tell you a great story. This just happened. I was skiing in France, and I was at an après ski. So I was about 6 hours ahead of New York time. And a founder called me. So it's like 7 a.m. this time. It's like maybe, I guess, 2 p.m. my time. So he calls me and he's like, hey, I need a chief of staff, VP of Ops type strategy person. This is what I'm looking for, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm listening to him talk, and I'm like, I think I got your guy, because I just spoke to this person like 3 weeks ago, and they're kind of exactly what you're looking for. And so while I'm on the phone with him, I text the candidate live, and I'm like, hey, I got something for you. This sounds pretty interesting. Let me know if you're interested in. And so I texted him the details as I'm on the phone with him. And by the time I was off that call, I had them introed via text to chat, because I'm like, just based on what you guys shared, it sounds like this is kind of a slam dunk for what you're both looking for. And I carried on my day. They actually had an interview that afternoon. And then I think it was like 4 or 5 weeks later, they hired that person.
Wow.
And we still did the search, and we still brought like 10 other people to the funnel, and they spoke too much to them, but that was the hire. And like, I think that is great recruiters. When they hear something, it's like, where do they go first? And if that first pool has, because recruiting markets are always time based as well. Your hire might be only your hire for that one time that you had. There's so many searches we do, Adam, where a client doesn't even know that the hire that they made, like, we hit the whole thing. Like, if they, and we were, everything's exhausted. And if they don't make this hire, I don't think they're making a hire. Like, it's like, you're gonna have to change the whole thing. There's so many times where that happens. And sometimes clients don't actually know that that's what's going on behind the scenes.
It's like they've exhausted the whole.
And they don't know, because sometimes they think, hey, I want to speak to more. Whereas I thought we'd have more and more. I'm like, sometimes more is not a good thing. It gets you all too cloudy as well. So
Of course, some people just and they wait. And then on the note of like companies, you go back to your point about how hard it is to hire really top people right now. So if you're not Anthropic or OpenAI, how do you compete in this world? Like, what are these companies doing to get these top tier talent? Because you said, if you're really top tier and you're good, you should probably only go work at Anthropic or OpenAI or start your own company. Like, why would you go join someone else when, let's be clear, 90% of startups fail, right? So it's hard to go make that happen. And if you think you're top tier, why go do that for someone else? So how does an employer break through?
you can't really win. I mean, you can, but you can't really win on comp and equity. You can. You can give people way higher percentage points. You can raise a little bit more money in your seed and pay way higher salaries, and that might win. But for those types of people, to be honest, it comes down to what's the story of what you're building and where are you going? Because the only way that I'm going to leave being employee number 5,000 at Anthropic and just like basically now just on my rocket ship to the moon is if I can come have a massive impact. And sure, yes, there'll be amazing upside for us and all these kind of things. But it all comes down to like, what's the story here? What are you building? Because otherwise, I'm not going to bother. I can go from, I can go from like an like this is the interesting thing, which I think is the challenge for most is like I can go from those companies to the next tier down, right? Of like high growth. So we've already referenced Cursor and Anthropic as an example, but it's like Anthropic's already here. Cursor's like you're doing this. I could just they'll Cursor will overpay for me, or whatever, and I'll go there and I still have some upside or what have you. Otherwise, it's like I need to really believe in what you're doing. And there's a lot of interesting things happening, right? Like there's just this amazing influx of capital flowing to these AI agent companies, the space exploration, the biotech. Like it feels like we're on this next frontier. So I think if you're not building on that frontier, it's going to be hard for you to secure top talent. But that doesn't mean you can't still accomplish your goals by hiring people who are not from those companies, right? And that's probably where you need to focus, to be honest.
And so, speaking of a component related to hiring is culture and also building a great business, right? Entrepreneurial excellence. What are the companies that have the best culture? What does that look like when you look at companies and getting deep with them? Like, what sort of is the best culture? What does that look like? What does that entail? What do you think makes for great cultures where the top tier talent want to go, and how those founders set up that culture?
Well, I think the best cultures in the world, it just comes down to what type of people did they bring into the business, right? Because whatever that saying goes, where if you hire A players, they're going to help hire other A players, right? And if you hire B players, they hire C players. And then if you have that sort of B's and it just permeates the entire business, and then you don't have that bar of performance, right?
Yep.
And so right now, I think the best cultures are the ones that are embracing the moment, embracing change, and they're hiring really competent people, and everyone has an ownership mentality, right? Like an extreme ownership mentality on your outcomes, not your work put in.
How do you, and what's as a candidate, how do you stand out and kind of make like I ask people then like why come work for chore? I ask them that. They always have some sort of canned answer, but I'm not really sure I ever get a lot of signal from that question. So I'm not even sure if I should ask it because everyone's going to tell you, oh, I want to work because you're building really cool stuff and things like that. And like, what's the real answer that I should dig into for like why us and what gets you excited?
Yeah, I think as an example, it's hard to ask that question on your first interview. If someone applied to your job, you go, "Hey, why do you want to work here?" Well, to be honest, they don't really know that much. They haven't talked, you know what I mean? The best time to ask that at the end of the process is like, so, now that you've got a chance to like really speak to some people and like see it through, why are you interested in working here? That signal should be a lot deeper because it should be like, well, there's context on the people I spoke with. Like, here's why, having the opportunity to work for this person for these reasons. Like, I love that this is their approach to this, and that. Like, this is why I'm super. And having strong conviction on that why, you'll feel that, I think, as a founder in your gut as to like where someone is really at with that. Whereas to your point, if it's canned after 3 or 4 interviews, you feel kind of like a meh response. That's probably your signal that they're not going to be bought in.
How do you manage like culture at Jagger? Like, how do you create a great culture for your team?
We have a pretty simple sort of culture mentality, which is again extreme ownership on outcomes. We operate in a cutthroat industry. We're only as good as our last search. Everybody is compensated and incentivized as such in terms of there's really great rewards for great performance here. And if you don't perform, you don't get to really reap in the benefits of what this industry can provide you, and some of the clients that we can work with can provide you. But you're only as good as your last search, and everyone knows that. So that's actually a really amazing sort of foundation because as it relates to like stress, for example, like no one has stress in our business because of things that I'm demanding of them. The industry will already demand those of those, right? So on the balance part of that is like extreme ownership of outcomes. We have to work at the pace at which our clients expect us to, right? If we want to stay competitive with them, balanced with an incredible team, super supportive. Everybody's a team mentality. Everyone wants to see other people win, even though we're not really necessarily working on things together in that sense, right? Like it's a lot of just individualism in terms of our clients and searches. So that's like two interesting sort of yin and yangs that I think, results in some pretty great magic actually.
And I mean, I think, by the way, I would argue that's maybe the mentality you need for all hires in every company nowadays. And what I mean by that is everyone needs to have sort of extreme ownership. And you need to make sure you're getting the outcomes you expect. It's not just, sure, it's easier to track if it's like a retained search services, like, hey, what is your actual metric? But for every role, like one thing I'm trying to help my team understand is like for every role, there's a metric that you're shooting for. If you are unable to prove out to me on a regular basis that you're crushing that metric, then let's have a conversation. Maybe the metric's wrong. I'm cool with that discussion. Let's have that discussion, all these other things. But if you're unable to do that, then maybe it's not the right fit for you. Like I've had people who tell me like, hey, like I'm I'm doing my job well. I'm like, okay, what's the proof? And if
Mm.
you're unable to prove it in a simple, clear way, it's not the right fit for you anymore. And I didn't think the world's changing.
One of my quotes on that on the current moment is there is no budget for average. So we have no more budget for average. We have this in this moment, if you are average, maybe average is the wrong word, but if you're like kind of mediocre-ish at your job, it's only a matter of time before you just stop being able to be valuable to a company, which means that they wouldn't pay you for your skill set and your time. So there's no budget for average. And
Correct. And the funny thing is that what I've also told, I tell everyone in my team, and we have a very clear outline for how we do progression of a career. The targets are really clear. If you keep doing great work, we will do everything in our power to keep you around and make sure you're super well compensated. And I don't understand. Some people really get bothered by that. And I'm like, look, you have to perform. We're not in a world anymore where you just get a promotion because you've been here for a year. I'm like, I don't care. Like, first of all, you shouldn't really be here for a year if you're underperforming. But even if you're performing on average, like, okay, average is maybe okay. Like, if you're just doing your job, cool. But don't expect a promotion for just doing your job. You need to do it at the next level, which is outlined clearly. And the next level, then we should do everything in our power to keep you. Like, it should be obvious that you're good.
and sometimes companies get that wrong. They have a high performer and they don't reward them, they don't feed that person, and then that person leaves and they don't understand until that person left, but they how good of a person they had, right? So it goes both ways too.
Well, and that's where people need to be thoughtful too. And definitely people mess that up. When is the right time? When should founders decide, like, I'm going to reach out to a recruiting firm versus not? Like, in other words, like, when do they do it themselves versus hiring you guys?
Well, there's two ways to think about it. One is you just do it right at the onset because you want to have a partner right at the onset. You want to have like a thought partner. Maybe sometimes founders, I get intro to founders, they just want to talk about what they should be looking for or their comp or whatever. And they're not really looking to engage a recruiter. And I'm always happy to have those conversations because, whether or not they end up using us for the search doesn't matter. Now we have some rapport and a relationship there. But I think as a general rule of thumb, like most companies want to try hiring it themselves. And as long as they have like a bit of a time, no problem. I would always say, hey, do it yourself. Most cost effective way. Also, like being able to rely on some inbound or like the internal network, like whether that's references or referrals from people that work at the company, like that, or investors, that's always great because there's always some additional context, right? And so it all depends on when you need that role filled by, right? There's certain revenue generating roles where like you need this role filled immediately. I wouldn't wait because also when you're hiring people who are currently employed, sometimes people forget to factor in a 2 to 4 week notice period. You got to work backwards from that. You got to run an interview process. There's interview scheduling, all that kind of stuff. General rule of thumb for us, like we've had some searches that have been signed agreement, closed offer 5 days, which is insane. Like that's crazy. And there's sometimes it's like a week. That's also crazy. But like sometimes companies have already been looking for months and then they get the person that, oh, we already know, and they hire. On average, 3 to 4 weeks is like the average turnaround time of like start to finish filled because you got interviews, you got great pipeline built at the onset, rounds of interviews scheduled all those weeks, offer. Most probably fall like, I'd say like 4 to 6 weeks ish, right?
Yep.
And then 6 weeks and beyond, that's going to be more like exec search, or sometimes if the search just like you have the person, you had the offer fell through, there's like a week backup and then you got to go back to funnel. That's kind of like a general rule of thumb in terms of the process itself. So
The time tax is a really good point. Like the cost of waiting too long and going too slow. Like that's also what's going back to where we started, right? The investment in your own business, the time that it takes, if you need that person and you're sure you need that person to help take you to the next level, the time it takes to find that person in that role is, if it takes you too long, you're hurting your business really clearly. So you pay for the speed of a recruiter. What are the best questions that you've seen founders ask, like interview questions? Like, what are your favorite interview questions that you think actually get to the meat and potatoes of like, this is a great hire, that are like differentiated?
it's a great question. I feel like everyone has their own sort of like different sort of spiel on how they do that. To be honest, like a lot of the interviews that our founders have, we're not on them. You know what I mean? It's like they kind of do it themselves. But like some of the ones that I, you know, love to ask people is like, there's the obvious ones where people will be like, give me a time when, you had an unrealistic objective or unrealistic deadline and how did you hit it? Right. And that's like a very common one where people are trying to see how people work under pressure. And like, it's very cookie cutter, but what you're looking for is not really what they're saying. It's how they're saying and how they're explaining about, again, being very specific around that story. One question that's like I kind of like asking it because it really speaks to someone is like, I'll ask someone is like, when's the last time that you felt truly alive? Which is just not really an interview question that they really don't, it catching them off guard. And sometimes people go, oh, I haven't been asked that before. Or they go, sometimes it opens up their eyes where it's been so long, and actually they've actually been like kind of just like slogging away for so long that they don't, and it really opens up the conversation to another part of like what ends up happening is if they haven't felt it in a very long time, it usually correlates to what do we spend the most of our time doing, working, what's been missing, and then you can kind of go a little bit deeper into that. And that's just like a not an unconventional question, that I like to ask because it's like not really a common interview one. And then there's just like, I mean, there's a lot, like, there's so many examples of other ones that, people use,
I like
but
that one when the last time we felt alive. It would be really interesting to ask, especially senior people that, and make sure you can figure out that your company will fulfill that, right? That's sort of a key thing too, of course, is tying that together. I want to spend a few minutes just talking about your life and like how you manage your life overall, right? So you've traveled to 65 countries,
75.
75, and you got married, what, like 4 years ago or so?
Yep.
How do you manage to build a successful company, been profitable, obviously, can pay your lifestyle, things like that. You can stay ahead of the curve with AI and travel a ton, see the world, do that. Like why have you set up your life that way, number one, instead of, let's say, pushing harder and just being grinding every day in the office 996 or something to build the world's biggest recruiting firm? And then why travel as your outlet versus a million other things?
I was always enchanted by, the idea of these. Sometimes you see these stories of people who are like, they have a certain amount of money or they have a business, but they travel the world. It's like very like lifestyle oriented. They have these incredible lives, the rich lives, not just working, not just money, not just fun, not just whatever. One thing I've loved about recruiting is because it is, again, you can do it from anywhere in any market. It's a phone and a laptop. It's outcomes driven. Some of my favorite stories are like, I'll give you an example. We were in 2019, we were doing an Africa safari in Botswana. And right before we were about to go and be phones off, I had this offer on the table. This is 2019. So I maybe had like 3 or 4 people work with me, but I was kind of handling a lot of things myself. And like, you're about to go on this trip, there's a big deal on the line. And it's like maybe 1 a.m. because you're time ahead. And you open the laptop and you do the thing, deal closes, you close the laptop and you just look outside and you're like, the next day you're going to safari. Like, to me, that has been such a cool experience. And for whatever reason, I've been so uh, driven by experiencing so much more of the world and being so travel oriented. There's been some really cool experiences I've had. Like we stayed with the tribe in Papua New Guinea. We trekked Western Mongolia with Kazakh nomads for 8 days. Stayed with monks in Bhutan. Some of the wildlife related things, right? Swimming with whale sharks. I've always been so curious about what the world has to offer, and that's been really the guiding light for the first sort of, I guess, 10 years of my professional life. And I actually think that that has made me be more driven and work harder to produce outcomes that are good for my clients. They end up paying us the business, structure the business in such a way that it's always been sort of a profitable, growing, sort of cash flowing machine. And that's made me just fit the life mold of what I tried to build. So I look at my life as like I'm a life maxer sort of, person. Life maxer is somebody who wakes up and says, what do I want to be doing every single day? Or what do I want my life to represent? And it's all the things that they actually care about doing. So for me, like, life maxing means I'm traveling the world. I have time in my day to go to the gym, take care of myself. I'm a good friend. I'm a good partner. Someone says, hey, you want to go do this crazy thing on the weekend? Well, guess what? I've structured myself in such a way that anytime, any place, I can say yes if I want to, and I can just go. And I'll deal with the repercussions afterwards. Like, for example, if it's time or money or whatever. And I think it's been a ton of joy. There's been a lot of joy in my life throughout all of the stresses of building a business, and also the additional stresses of, to your point, being in an industry that is lower reputation. When you're not that person, like, I'm not transactional. I don't really care. I tell clients this. I don't care about the placement. Obviously, that's how we get paid. I'm at the point now where like one search with one company just won't move the needle. But the relationship over the next 5 years certainly will. Whether that's multiple searches, it's just, so anyways, life's all about chapters, and that's certainly been my first 10 years of, like, let's say 25 to 35. I do feel like actually that as a central theme, that sort of travel the world, it's that chapter feels like it's closing a little bit, and now I feel like I might actually want to be a little bit more in a build mode and what have you. Start a family this year, all that kind of stuff. So maybe that will change, and that might change how I operate on a day to day basis. It might change how I allocate capital. One of the ways that I've done it is because I have this business that, to be honest, I'm not sure the multiples are really that interesting. And a lot of times when people look to buy search firms, they're gonna pay you 4 or 5 times EBITDA. You're going to stay on for 3 or 4 years. You're basically now just running a practice within a search firm, which is just something that I'm not really that interested in doing.
Mhm.
So I have to know that in terms of enterprise value, there's not really this business isn't really being built or sold, but that's okay. It's a great business, and so I've built I'll spit out a bunch of cash. A lot of my investments in my equity, quote unquote, is actually just in public equities and some other like I've got some angel investments. You mentioned a couple of the companies at the start of the call. Those are all companies that I've either written checks in early or sometimes we do equity instead of fees. Um,
Yeah, nice.
and so that I think also being a little bit more dialed on having money outside of the business further enables you to be more risk on in your business, but also further enables you in your life where you can do these things that again might cost money or what have you, but you've got a pretty solid backbone. It's not like everything all in one particular place. So that's allowed me to be sort of more of a life maxer, I guess.
I love it. Quick lightning round, a few things here. One country every founder should visit before turning 40.
Japan.
Totally agree. Japan's so,
Yes.
so, so great. Such a different mindset in some ways.
That's why when you said founder country is Japan, obviously, because this is like you just go to this place. It's like the only place in the world where they live. Like it's like you're in a different planet, but there's so much you can take from it. And I just love it. And the food's
Totally
great.
great. Worst red flag in a candidate.
Oh, there's so many. That's the problem. Like I'm like my
Is there a big one that's a red flag? Like, stay away.
if they talk shit about their previous company.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit of a cop out. There's so many ways they could think of it. Like for example, when someone tweets something in their resume, like their resume doesn't align with their LinkedIn, that's always interesting. When someone is rude to rude to us reaching out, that's always a red flag. It's almost always going to turn out that way. If there's any sort of rude communications between them and the client, like we still move forward, it usually ends up being that way. I want to tell you one story on that. We had a candidate once go to offer stage where at the time they wanted to, I guess, report to the CEO, but the role was always reporting to the COO, like from the get go. Our initial reach out, the job description, everything, right? And so the company wants to move forward with this person. And at the end of the process, it's been like 6 weeks, 6, 7, 8 interviews. It was like a C suite role. They declined the offer and then started ghosting the recruiter on my team, which was weird because they had such a great relationship the whole time. Like it was weird to just like all of a sudden ghost. Like again, these sometimes happen, right? Ghosting is a huge red flag. And so the recruiter was confused. And then I got a text from the COO like a week later being like, I'm so mad at you. And I was like, that's kind of a weird text to get. I never get a text like that. And what it was this person was adamant about reporting to the CEO. And rather than just be honest about it, they said that they were lied to that the role reports to they were told it reports to the CEO when in fact it reports, but that's not true. So the CEO was mad at me that he's like, you led this candidate straight. I'm like, I had to then go and send 3 different literally communications, email, text, all saying reporting to COO, report to COO, whatever.
Right.
And so we were all in alignment. We said, hey, we should move forward with this person. Like there's no way.
Yeah, really.
The company still did. The CEO overrode everybody and still went forward with that person. And as you can imagine, it did not work out.
One of those red flags. It's funny when founders do that. I mean, I try really hard as a founder not to override my team when they feel that way because it's usually a red flag and you just should listen to your team and trust them and also listen to your recruiters, in that case, part of your team. Makes sense. Is there one person who's changed your trajectory in life in a big way?
One person that comes to mind is Allison Kaiser. She's at Golden Ventures. And the reason I say that is twofold. One is Allison runs talent for Golden Ventures portfolio, which is a lot of early stage startups. And she's one of the best in recruiting. And so she has a lot of trust from everyone that really talks to her. And we're really like the only recruiting company they refer into the portfolio because she's been able to see us deliver all across. So there's a commercial aspect of this, but actually the reason I say that is because she's the type of person, and I think you need these type of people in your life where you'll be in a room with them, in a room that you don't know anyone, they know her, and she'll go around the room telling everyone how great you are. And
Mm,
and sometimes as founders, we have all these sort of, even you could be like the most calm and life maxing, but you still have those doubts. You still have that imposter syndrome. And you're in this room and you're not even sure if you should be in this room. And you have somebody going in there saying those things about you. And having people who believe in you when sometimes you don't believe in yourself can really change the way that you have your own relationship with yourself, which again then changes your outcomes.
yep.
So that's just one of the first people that came to mind from a professional sense, where it's like not only is this person been a great sort of business partner to us, but they're a friend and they're also like such a supporter where they want to see you be successful. And it's just like those doors that person's open is just incredible. So I'm super indebted to that relationship.
That's cool. If there's like a young let's say there's a young person in a small town or small city listening to this right now who's working at a bar, right? Like you were at one point, in something that they don't love, dreaming of something bigger. What's something you would want them to hear?
When I left a small town and I went to a bigger city, I thought I could take over the world, and I didn't really know how the world worked. So one of my core foundational stories is when I moved from Winnipeg to Vancouver at 23, I had this app that kind of went somewhere and then didn't. So I had a very public sort of like failure. Like it got acquired, but really got acquired for like nothing. You know what I mean? It was just so we could say it got acquired. And I had a lot of this anxiety that I never really dealt with before. I was having panic attacks. And so when I got to Vancouver, which was the city I had never lived in before, and I didn't know anyone there, I applied to 2 roles. I applied to a director of people potential at Lululemon, which was their version of like a director of HR, 10 years of HR leadership experience, all these kind of things. And I applied to this job literally thinking I could get it. Like, I'm not kidding. It wasn't like, not like, I wasn't like, I was like, I wrote them an email and I said, I know people, I know potential, like, please find my resume and close. And it's like a bartender resume. So this is like, like imagine the noise that we talk about, but like, this is, so there was that role. And the other role I applied for was business search consultant on Craigslist of all places. And no one goes on Craigslist to look for their careers. But again, 23, I have no clue how anything works. It was offering $200,000 in 2014. And like 200K is a lot of money, but 200K in 2014 is a lot more than it is in 2026.
Yeah.
And so I'm 23. I'm like, I could be a business search consultant, like whatever that means. And that was actually a small recruiting company trying to hire. It was 100% commission, no draw. You're not an employee. Bring your laptop. Sketchy office in the industrial district near the airport. And all I could think of at the time was, I see it. They say you could make that much, but like I said, it's 100% commission. I didn't care. If I would have asked anyone about advice about what I should and shouldn't do, not a single person would say you should go through with this opportunity, right? I just saw that it could be a potential way for me to accelerate through the path of what I wanted to accomplish, and I went for it. So for anyone that's a young person, and it doesn't, the thing is now is like, it doesn't even matter location. 10, 12 years ago, whatever it was, location mattered a little bit more, but now it really doesn't matter. There's like online communities, there's online courses, there's online everything that, there's amazing businesses being built everywhere. And so I wouldn't believe in any of the restrictions that someone might say that you have. I would just try to find little paths that might take you to where you want to go. And everyone's goals and stuff are different. And so that's what I would say.
Yeah. No. So the key takeaway is just go for it. Show off what you can do, essentially.
I think you got to go for it. You gotta be willing to fail. You have to be willing to deal with the downsides of it. I remember the anxiety that I had the first couple of months not making $1, and then you had like 5 or 6 grand savings, like dwindling like you just watching your whole world cave in, and you get through it. And if you don't get through it, like people think that their life is gonna crumble if things don't go their way. It won't.
Correct.
It is what it is.
The world is, relatively speaking, generous place if you're willing to work hard, and you'll figure it out, and you can make money doing it in almost anything. There are so many opportunities out there. And then maybe to finish it off, like I always ask the same question, which is like, if there's a single piece of advice that you could give to every entrepreneur to achieve excellence, and maybe this is more focused on recruiting, but like in general, what's a single piece of advice you would give people? If you're like, boil it all down, all the lessons you've learned in life, what equals entrepreneurial excellence and really success as an entrepreneur, especially as like a bootstrapped entrepreneur in your case? What does that mean? How does someone achieve it? What's your piece of advice there?
Surround yourself with the right people and think bigger.
Yeah.
That's it.
Think bigger. I love that. Jay, how can people find you if they want to learn more, get in touch, hire you guys as recruiters, you name it? Where can people find you?
Okay, so LinkedIn, I'm Jay Berard. Same with my Instagram handle is @JayBerard. Our company is called Jagger. The domain is hellojagger.com. And my email is first initial last name, jberard@hellojagger.com. Reach out anytime.
Amazing. Everyone should. Jay, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for spending some time with me and my audience. Our time is precious and probably the one resource we can choose where we invested and we can't get more of. So thank you for spending some of that with myself and the audience.
Thanks, Adam.